Hello, everyone. Dr. Adriana Popescu here with you today with another episode of Triumphing Over Trauma, our inspirational video series on the topic of healing from trauma. And I'm really excited to have with me as my guest, Charmian Johnson, coming straight from the UK. She is a former global law firm partner turned accredited somatic trauma informed coach and narcissistic abuse specialist. After nearly 30 years in law, outwardly calm and competent, but inwardly burning out, a series of personal losses led her to study the nervous system, trauma, and patterns of self doubt and overworking. Now certified in coaching full time, she helps high achieving women, especially lawyers, break free from perfectionism, imposter syndrome, and the never enough thinking so that they can feel confident, grounded, and fulfilled. Welcome, Charmian.
Thank you so much for having me, and what an intro. Thank you.
Yes. Well, I would love to hear a little bit more about your story and how it came to be that you did a pretty radical shift there in career to do a very different kind of work.
Yeah, absolutely. So, as you said at the outset, for nearly 30 years, I worked in global law firms. I was a global law firm partner since about 2009 up until the 1st of May this year when I resigned from the partnership. And you might be thinking, well, why? I'm actually a pensions lawyer in the UK, and a lot of people have said, why is a pensions lawyer now a trauma-informed coach? And it was really due to difficult personal circumstances. So I had an alcoholic brother who sadly died at the start of lockdown. So in the UK, that was around May 2020. It was a challenging time for many people, lockdown, but particularly addicts, because he couldn't go to work to distract himself. He was going through a divorce with my sister-in-law. He was in a flat on his own in central London. He couldn't really leave the apartment. And sadly, and it was like a car crash in slow motion, we could see what was happening. And sadly, he basically drank himself to death. So that was absolutely devastating, even though not a huge shock. We know that you can't live like that so chaotically without suffering some consequences. But on top of that, it was my parents' attitude that was a real shock as well. They'd been divorced for many, many years. I think they divorced when I was about 7. I'm 52 now. And they seemed to have clandestine meetings at the house. Me and my remaining brother, we weren't really involved in any of the funeral arrangements. We weren't allowed to speak at the funeral. And we think now it was very much because they wanted to uphold this narrative that my brother's death through alcoholism was nothing to do with them. They weren't bad parents. They thought it reflected on them. And so they seemed to treat friends and strangers more warmly than me and my remaining brother, who were very much left out in the cold. Long story short, they had such narcissistic traits I know about now. I didn't even know what the word narcissist meant until my 40s. And so grief, confusion, and need for answers led me to wanting to know more. I ultimately went no contact with my parents. So you've got the death of a brother, leaving his 3 and 5-year-old sons, no contact with my parents. And I thought I need a community. So I looked for a community and started doing a somatic trauma-informed coaching certification, really just for me, for personal benefit. But when I started going through it, there was light bulb after light bulb moment. And I thought, that's why I never felt good enough. Throughout my legal career, despite arguably being at the top of my game, I didn't feel it. It might have looked great on paper, but I didn't feel good enough. And so I just thought this knowledge is just too good to keep to myself. I must share it with others. And when I spoke to my law firm to say, I'm now certified, I'd like to announce my coaching services, they said, well, you can't do both. So I resigned from the partnership. And so 6.5 months ago, I launched my own coaching business. So that's what's led me to this point. And it just shows how passionate I am. And I just wish, well, my mission really is to spread the word, because knowing this stuff is so empowering.
Hmm. Absolutely. Wow. What a story. What do you think helped you the most in healing from really this trauma that seems to have multiple layers to it?
Yeah, and I think it's probably the same with a lot of people having all these different layers. You know, there's the
Hmm.
obvious trauma, the death of my brother, no contact with parents. But you'll know that there's much less obvious trauma, that when you start looking at this stuff and peeling back the layers, a bit like an onion, there's always something else. You can see that even my parents' divorce at the age of 7 was traumatic for me. And I think that in itself was something that stemmed, well, that must be because of me, because my brain was so underdeveloped at that age. Everything's around you, isn't it? You think, well, their divorce must be because I'm not good enough. And there's lots of little instances like that. You know, my father was an alcoholic, being left at the school gates for hours and hours. All these little things add up, don't they, to the feeling of not good enough. And I think what helped me the most is learning about my nervous system.
Hmm.
And when you're in the green zone at the bottom, that's where your confidence comes from. But the minute your nervous system perceives a threat, and it's usually a perceived threat, fear of being visible or somebody being mean to you, you move up into fight flight. And if that threat continues, you're in freeze, which can look like very low energy depression or what have you. And I think once I knew physiologically what was going on, which was, stress and trauma affecting my nervous system and influencing how I was showing up, it was a game changer for me, because I knew if physically I knew what was going on, then I could do something about it. I could track where I was at in my nervous system and use some practical tools to just bring myself down. A bit like managing the symptoms, if you like, but then
Hmm.
looking back when I was younger to see, well, where do these limiting beliefs come from? And I think the awareness and curiosity are game changers, aren't they? Because once you realise these aren't character flaws, it's your nervous system trying to protect you, the protective strategies. So knowing that means you can change it, and this isn't as good as it gets. You can do something about it. And I loved that. I loved, maybe because I'm so analytical as a lawyer, I needed to know why something worked, why something was happening, and what I could do about it, which I loved.
Yeah, and thankfully the science is finally catching up. The development of polyvagal theory was huge. I mean, a total game changer in my field, the field of psychology, because I think before that people treated trauma psychologically. Let's talk about your story. Let's get into the feelings. But mostly what that would do for folks is just re-trigger the physiological response. We hadn't put together the mind body aspect. We didn't understand that trauma was physiological and not just psychological.
Absolutely, and that's right. And people that come to me, they've often had a lot of talking therapy, and don't get me wrong, some talking therapy can be great for people, seen, heard, validated, all good stuff. But ultimately, it only deals with up here, but not the body. Where, like you say, that there can be a lot of stored trauma and emotions in the body. So that's key for effective, lasting change. The mind body connection for sure. And
Yeah.
again, it's knowing this stuff, isn't it? People are
Yeah.
like, why have I not been taught this stuff at school?
Well, they're not. And they think that if, they're having a hard time dealing with a challenging event, I mean, they might even minimize it. It's a trauma. Oh, well, trauma is, something really obvious, like an assault, being a war victim, like something like that. But I don't think people understand how trauma isn't about what happened to you. It's about how you respond to it, how your body responds to it, how your psyche responds, how the beliefs that come from experiencing things like this, feeling like, yeah, I'm not good enough, or maybe I deserve this, or I'm powerless over the things that happen to me. It's so much more subtle and intricate than I think most people understand.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I think the other side to it is these parts of us that show up, such as the anxious part. It could be the people pleasing part, the imposter, the perfectionist.
Yeah.
So for me, with my father, he was emotionally absent, and I'm not parent bashing necessarily. I think parents often do the best they can with the capacity they have.
Mhm.
But I think I only got attention from my father when I did really well at, say, school, or he thought I was being clever, which
Right.
led to me being an overachiever and a perfectionist because I equated that with getting love. And it carried on throughout my legal career. And I think any time there was any sort of fear of my nervous system thinking, oh, we're going to go back to that pain of not feeling good enough, up would come the imposter or the perfectionist part. And I think we're often told, aren't we, to lean in, fight the fear, do it anyway. Again,
Right.
very much in the mind, in the head. But the approach with me and my clients was, well, let's befriend those parts, get to know them, welcome
Mm.
them in. What do they think would happen if they didn't show up? And so working with parts is just been a game changer for me as well.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that because it also it takes some of the shame out of this idea that there's something wrong with me, right? I'm not good enough. All these limiting beliefs. It's not global. It's that there's a part of you that believes that to be true. There's a part of you that's still maybe stuck in the trauma, but you also have other parts, right? You have parts that have managed, to help you become a successful lawyer. You have parts as a personal friend. Maybe you're a parent, maybe you're a partner, whatever you are. You have other parts of yourself that don't necessarily struggle with the same thing. And then we could get really into like IFS and all these other things. And we have manager parts and protector parts. And, it's this stuff has been studied for a very long time. And I think we therapists, coaches, we have a much greater understanding in this day and age on how to help people navigate and move through the aftermath of trauma so that they can move to the stage of post traumatic growth. So I wanted to ask you about that. Like, what does that term mean to you, Charmian, post traumatic growth?
Yeah, I think it's really not letting your past define who you are and not let it keep you stuck. I think
Hmm.
awful things have happened to people in the past, and you can't change that. And it's not to invalidate that it was a blooming awful experience, but it doesn't have to define who you are. You do have the ability to be able to change things that are keeping you stuck. And whilst I wouldn't ever prefer to have my brother dead than alive, I miss him every day. But even going through that and going no contact with my parents, I feel like I've grown so much. I've learned so much. And I
Yeah.
wouldn't be where I am now without having to deal with all these traumatic events. And I know about myself a lot more now. And I'd hope it would give hope to people
Yes.
because it hasn't kept me stuck and it hasn't kept me small. And I don't think I would have had the courage to resign from my law firm partnership without having done this work and coming
Mhm.
through the other side. And it's changed my life, and
Yeah.
for the better. I'm much calmer now. I'm more compassionate, and I'm just a lot happier and content. And define success. You can have a really well paid job, but does that define success? Now I'm master of my own time. I'm helping people. It's all about the passion and the purpose for me now. I can actually have time to exercise and eat nourishing meals now, believe it or not. But it's all about choices, isn't it? And
Yeah.
I think that post traumatic growth gives you the freedom and the options to go after what you want.
Oh, I love it. What would you say to someone who is currently struggling? Maybe they're right in the middle of it. I mean, look at what's happening in the world. Lots of painful, challenging, and traumatic things are happening all around us. What would you suggest for someone who's right in the middle of it?
I'd say try and check in with those sensations. So if somebody's quite anxious, and gosh, you only have to listen to the news every day, don't you? And you start to feel that anxiety creeping up in your body. It's tracking that and catching it before it develops into something where you're just completely offline in the emotional part of your brain and can't deal with it. So I think notice it, and then you can take steps to do something about it. I often have something like this on my desk. This is just a scented balm. It's
Mm.
something really simple. So if I feel myself getting anxious, I often just, smell this scent, which I love, And that triggers the vagus nerve and the parasympathetic, so that the body starts to calm down. I mean, and
Mhm.
they talk about grounding and engaging your senses, and I used to think, what's grounding? It sounds a bit woo woo for me. But when I realised that actually engaging your senses, what can you smell, what can you see, what can you feel, etc. Once I knew it moved you out of the emotional part of your brain and into the front logical, rational thinking part of your brain, and everything calmed down, I thought, now I know how it works. I'm going to use it. And
Yeah.
scent is a really powerful sense
Yeah.
that we have. So for me,
Mhm.
it's just something simple as noticing what's going on in my body, how I feel. So coming out of our heads for a minute, I'm feeling a
Yes.
bit anxious. So physiologically, it might be heart rate's gone up. I'm breathing a bit more shallow. I'm feeling a little bit more energy. I'm a bit more agitated. At that point, when you notice it, that's when you can do something about it, just to calm down,
Yeah.
back into the
Brilliant.
nice green calm zone, if you like.
Yes, yes, yes. And having something, I always find that having something of nature, if possible, even if it's just a plant in your house, if
Yes.
you live in a city, but being able to, like, I can look out the window and see this tree, or I can look at the plants in my house, and just like be reminded that that peace is available, and that my body wants to be in a calm state. I just have to learn the skills and the tools to be able to help it get there. So
Yeah.
that's great advice. If people want to find out more about you and your work, where can they go?
Probably one of the easiest places is LinkedIn. So I'm on there. If they just type in Charmian Johnson, I'll come up on LinkedIn. And I also have a website, Sham Johnson at thementalwellbeingcompany.com. So they can find me on there. But LinkedIn's probably the easiest, and they can connect and message me on there.
And we'll be sure to include that in the show description. Thank you so much for your time and for being with us today. Any final thoughts for the audience?
Just We talked about engaging senses, but it's finding something for them that works, just something that makes them feel good. Like you say, it might just be being in nature, a walk outside. It might be putting some music on. There's always something that they can anchor to help them feel a more relaxed sense of well-being. And there's always hope. This isn't as good as it gets. You're not stuck at this stage. So there's always something you can do.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, audience, for tuning in today. If you have found this information helpful, if you know of someone who might benefit from watching this, please do share, subscribe to the channel, review, comment, all the things that will help get this information into the hands of the people who need it so much. So thank you, Charmian. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you next time on Triumphing Over Trauma.